Hello, I'm Summer Stephan, San Diego County District Attorney, and I want to thank you for engaging and investing in this important training. We know that you have a lot on your plate, but to take the time for you to learn more from the very voices that are affected and impacted in our community about persons with disabilities and their stories and their lived experience is really admirable. And it'll just help us all do better and make sure that we are serving the community with the best, most updated information there is. As you know, sometimes persons with disabilities their disabilities are hidden, they're invisible. Sometimes you're able to detect it and you're able to act accordingly and provide the service based on what you are seeing. But sometimes persons with disabilities, their disabilities are invisible, and it requires more patience and more training for us to be able to serve them in the very best level we can. As law enforcement and first responders, you are the heartbeat of the community. The community counts on you for so many things, for safety, for compassion, for justice, and you continue to deliver. That's why this county is the best that it can be in the level of service. And this training is just one more step in the right direction of improving our services so that they really are there for everyone and there's an access to justice and to our system for everyone.
I can see the L, so this is 2 and this must be 3. But that's the struggle. My name is Michelle Krug and I am a blind senior. I also have some mobility issues and use a cane. People assume that I'm going to be able to read texts from them if they contact me back. They assume that I have access to email or a computer, and those are very challenging for me. So some of the things that would make it easier for me to get you the information that is helpful for you is identifying yourself, particularly if there's more than one person speaking at this, during the conversation, not necessarily over each other, but even at the same time. It's going to be challenging for me to pick out who's who. If somebody needs me to come in for an interview, or a follow-up, just be aware that last-minute changes, date, time, location that might seem very small can be challenging for me. My whole life is planning how to get somewhere, how to get home, how to get to the next place that I want to get to, what the timing is going to be. Does that allow me enough time? So those are they're doable, but they take extra planning or something to fix it.
I'm Susan Madison. I have rheumatoid arthritis since I was 6 years old. So I grew up with a disability. And in my later years now, I am using a wheelchair, a power wheelchair, as you can see, that is big and heavy. It's a very challenging thing because it impacts all of my joints. So my hands, I can write and type and do things like that, but certainly limitations, and I'm slow. I'm slow to get dressed, slow to eat, slow just to do things in an unusual way, which sometimes drives people crazy. One of the horrible things, and it happens all the time, is people stand when they want to talk to me for a period of time. Short conversation is not a problem. But, you know, I have to look up and crane my neck or strain like this, and it's really hard. So for all people using wheelchairs, please sit at their level, make eye contact, and don't pretend you understand when you don't. Don't separate me from my equipment, because that's how I'm going to be able to get up, get in maybe back in the wheelchair if I'm out of it for whatever reason. And I need it at the other end. I need it if I'm going somewhere, first responders or law enforcement, if there's an emergency, for instance. I'm going to need this wheelchair at the shelter or at your office or wherever. And that, of course, you need a paratransit, a lift-equipped vehicle. They're out there. They're not always available. If you don't know how to treat me or handle something in case I need like assistance, ask me. Ask. I'm going to know best how every individual will know best how they need to be assisted. And it's different for everybody. And then after you ask me, please listen.
This is Lucius. He is my service dog now for not just the seizures that I've had in the past, but he's like my pre-alarm before I even recognize that there's something that could cause me to have a potential medical emergency. My name is Jessica Kramer, and 20 years ago I became stricken with a brain and spinal cord swelling condition, and that has affected me in many different ways. Because it's neurological, a lot of the symptoms can come on unexpectedly, especially if I feel stressed or confronted. And those symptoms can be anything from losing my ability to see clearly with blurry vision, partial paralysis, one of my legs will just go out, and I also have had seizures. The struggle of having an invisible disability is that a lot of times from the outside I look perfectly normal, but there's some level of distress that I'm showing and asking for help or special circumstances, and it's easy for somebody to look at me and think I'm a faker. But as human beings, we just tend to observe what we see and make split-second decisions, especially in law enforcement interactions. And so it's just really important to reinforce and self-reinforce the idea that you can't see many types of disabilities, and if somebody is pleading for help or asking for an alternative or an accommodation, rather than trying to prove the ways that they might not be telling the truth, just offer to help and see if that creates a safer and better outcome. I'm part of the Sheriff's Take Me Home program, which is a special needs registry, and it asks if there are ways that the officer or deputy can approach me to help make a positive interaction. And just reassuring me that they're there to help is something that automatically calms me and allows me to put my trust into the officer. And for me, where it's been extremely valuable is that it does state that I have a medically required service animal that I'm not to be separated from, and so I'm able to get faster, more appropriate medical care.
Every driver needs a good co-pilot. This is my co-pilot.
And you purposely keep it on the dashboard, like on top
Always.
of the...
My name is Dr. Carolyn Smith. I am a 100% total and permanent combat wounded Army veteran, born and raised here in Santee, and I served in the Army as a military police officer, deployed to Iraq, and I'm a little bit unique because I was the machine gunner on the top of the Humvee. I was injured in a roadside bombing, and so I have frontal lobe damage, so it's a traumatic brain injury, PTSD. I have, it's called secondary to inhalation, so I inhaled a bomb, and so my respiratory system is severely compromised. I have an L4, L5, and S1 spinal fusion, so I'd fractured my whole lower spine. Both of my feet are fractured. And you know, they've remained that way. So I'm in pretty consistent pain, and that's been 20 years now. I also have hearing issues. You know, I have ocular nerve damage. So it's just kind of a head to toe, but I don't look disabled. I'm not in a wheelchair, I have all my limbs, you know, and things like that. But there's just days that, you know, if a migraine kind of kicks off, you know, that'll change the way I can hear you and interact with you. If you're talking to me on my right side, good luck. When I would, for example, park in a disabled parking, and I've had, throughout the last 20 years, I've had people call law enforcement because I wasn't allowed to park in disabled parking, although I have the placard, you know, and it clearly says disabled veteran, and you know, on my plates and you know, on my truck and whatnot. And I get yelled at. I get almost violently yelled at because how dare I take a parking spot for somebody who's actually disabled. So interaction with law enforcement was somebody like myself that they would assume, well, she's not disabled, why is she not paying attention to us, is really more about there's things that I can and can't do, and it really depends on the day. You guys already check plate and you run the plate, you know, this and that, but look for the other indicators, right? Look for the other indicators that Iraq veteran, Vietnam veteran, et cetera. Look for the indicators because it's more likely than not that you're off the bat are dealing with a disabled person. And it's typically on vehicles, you know, veteran or not. And if you know, it's not a veteran, look for the other key indicators, like the blue envelope program, right? Or you know, any sign and symptom that when you're approaching that vehicle, you could say, you know, hey, you're really not supposed to say, hey, how's your day? You having a great day? Well, no, because I just got stopped by you, right? But there's key terms that you could start using to say, you know, not asking for disability status, but asking if there's a disability, right? Figure out a way to include that in that 2-second conversation when you have that first interaction with the individual, so that you know. And it can actually lower that temperature. Because once the person with the especially invisible disability can tell you, hey, look, I have a TBI, speak slower, or I have, you know, cognitive decline, or I have a hearing impairment, or I have a speech impediment, or I just had a spinal fusion, you know, or whatever. That one conversation, that one thing of asking about a disability is going to be changing the way that law enforcement interacts with the community around us.
Thank you for taking the time to listen and to absorb this training, and for giving your precious time to those with lived experience, those who are persons with disabilities, whether visible or invisible. I know that you found this valuable and that you're able to apply it in your daily work in order to improve your service level. That's our goal, is to continue to serve with excellence and to serve with excellence towards every person in our community. I know this is your commitment every day, and I so appreciate it, and I know that the community appreciates it also.